Welcome back to the I Don't Want a Divorce podcast, coming to you from beautiful Tampa, Florida, in my studio/office. Now, this podcast is produced by Phil Dugas of Dugas Creative. That's D-U-G-A-S, Dugas Creative. By the way, if you need a website, a redesigned website, and a social media strategy, then you need Dugas Creative. My son-in-law, one of my favorite son-in-laws, by the way, Phil Dugas, is the owner, along with his wife Nancy, our daughter. And you can email Phil at Dugas Creative, that's D-U-G-A-S, dugascreative@gmail.com. He has revolutionized our business. We have a more and more of a reach, not only locally but across the country. So if you've got a small business that you want to grow, contact Phil. And speaking of websites, Dugas Creative, Phil designed mine, redesigned the whole thing. It was a dinosaur. Maybe you have a dinosaur of a website. He redesigned our entire website, davideclarkephd.com, so you can check that out, Clarke with an E, and see the work that he does. Okay, let's continue my series based on my book, Married But Lonely. Now, in my previous podcast, I said I was going to cover 4 common ways wives kill intimacy. Well, here they are. Now, take this like a woman. The first way a wife can kill intimacy is what I call the sweetheart of the rodeo. You are the good little woman who accepts her husband just the way he is, even though he doesn't share personal feelings. You are not a priority in his life, and he is about as romantic as a block of wood and has no idea of your personal needs. Unhappy in marriage, you feel as if you are living with a nice, decent male roommate, and you don't know him that well. Your marital relationship can be described as safe, stable, superficial, and boring. So boring it has killed any hopes of ever forging deeper, more passionate bonds. Okay, ma'am, if you believe your husband can't change and are tolerating a mediocre marriage, then you are part of the problem. You are enabling him, and that's the right word, enabling him to remain an intimacy avoider. Since he knows you are okay with who he is and will never demand he change, he has exactly zero motivation to do anything differently. If you have been the sweetheart of the rodeo, it is time to hang up your cowgirl hat and spurs. Stop being so nice, forgiving, and fake all the time. You are fake. Let the other sweethearts you know continue to grin and bear their intimacy avoiders. Choose instead to believe 3 truths. 1, you can wield tremendous power and influence in your IA's life. 2, he can change. And 3, you should never waver in your commitment to follow the strategy in these podcasts and in my book, Married But Lonely. The second way that a wife kills intimacy is what I call the nagging witch. You are way too aggressive in your attempts to get your man to open up and talk personally. In your drive to get some intimacy with your man, you are too direct and apply too much pressure. You pepper him with questions, press him for responses, and insist he tell you what he thinks and feels right stinking now. You bring up the same topic repeatedly in the hope that he will finally give you an answer. If he won't respond, you follow him down the hall, yakking away and pressing for a response. You are a nagging witch, and without realizing it, you are killing conversations and robbing yourself of the intimacy you so desperately desire. You don't mean to be a nagging witch, but that's what you are. You constantly back your husband into conversational corners. He feels threatened and controlled. Not surprisingly, he won't yield any dialogue. Instead, he clams up and says nothing, snaps at you in anger and frustration, or leaves the room. Sound familiar? Your style of trying to force your husband to communicate is a complete failure. It only succeeds in shutting him up and driving him farther away. He thinks you are attacking his manhood and independence. You know something? He's right. Your intensity becomes the only issue in his mind. As he fends off your high-pressure approaches, the thoughts rocketing through his brain are things such as, what a nag. What's her problem? Back off. I just want to get away from this screaming Mimi. He won't say these things out loud probably, but he's thinking them. Now, you may be a nagging witch who periodically turns into a volcano. You stuff your frustration, anger, and hurt over your husband's lack of communication. Finally, you get filled up to your eyebrows with pain and you erupt. You blast him with a verbal barrage of rage, disappointment, and bitterness. Critical, sarcastic, and belittling. You want to hurt him the same way he hurts you. Believe me, you do hurt him. But in doing so, you push him even further away. The cure for nagging witches is to practice the one-way communication technique I explained in my previous podcasts. You may have just listened to these, but it won't hurt to take a quick refresher course. Stop pressing him for responses. Develop the healthy habit of going to him, expressing what you want to say, briefly, directly, and honestly, and walking away. Tell him your needs and walk away. Share your feelings when he hurts or angers you and walk away. If you struggle to control your intensity with certain topics, write a note and give it to him, and then walk away. You could text him. And don't follow up. It's up to him to come to you. Another category of how a wife kills intimacy is she who can't be pleased. Like most wives, you assume your husband knows exactly what your needs are and chooses not to meet them. Without giving him any clues, you expect him to somehow figure out what you need and come through for you. You think if he really loved me, he would just know what I need. Not only are you living in a fantasy world, but you are also being unfair to your husband. Listen to me, ladies. Your husband has no idea what your needs are. Here is a man who can't find his shoes in the morning. A man who is about as sensitive and intuitive as a marble paperweight. A man who doesn't even know what his real needs are. How in the world do you expect him to identify and meet your needs? My wife, Sandy, the beautiful blonde, has been just as guilty as you in this area of expecting too much of a husband. Here's one small example. Until recently, Sandy would start a load of laundry on a Saturday afternoon. After getting the washer going in the garage, she would come into the house to tell me she was going out shopping for a while. I would say, "Great, honey, have a good time." She would respond, "Thanks, I will. See you later." Well, so far, so good. Get this, Sandy would leave and expect me to finish that load of laundry. The only problem was I had no idea she had clothes in the washer. How could I know that? She never said a word about it. She expected me just to realize she'd done that. Didn't I hear the garage door? Please. Unless I happened to stumble into the garage and hear the washer, I would never have known. Sandy would return home and say to me in her sarcastic tone, "Hey, thanks a lot for finishing the laundry for me." "What laundry?" I would say with a straight face. Sandy, and I'm not kidding here, would actually think that I knew about the load of laundry and had selfishly ignored it. Women. I finally convinced her that she has to tell me about the laundry before she leaves if she expects me to finish it for her. Like most husbands, I'm happy to meet a need as long as I'm told what it is. If Sandy doesn't tell me, that's her fault, not mine. Now look, I do try to focus on Sandy and anticipate some of her needs. If she leaves the house on Saturday without mentioning the laundry, I still run to the garage sometimes to check the washer, just in case. Sometimes there's a load going and I can surprise her by finishing it. It's fun to meet one of her needs without her saying a word. But that is a very rare occurrence. The old saying, even a blind squirrel finds a few acorns, comes to mind. You can't build a great need-meeting marriage on those few times a year when a husband meets an unspoken need. So tell your intimacy avoider in written form exactly what your basic, unchanging needs are. We covered this in a previous podcast. Also, tell your intimacy avoider verbally each day what you need. Be clear and specific. Do it every time. Follow these instructions and your husband will have a decent chance to please you and you will generate some genuine closeness. Okay, next category of how a wife kills intimacy. The woman who talks too much. There is no delicate way to say it. You talk too much. You fill the air with words, tossing topic after topic after topic at your poor, overwhelmed husband. You don't even pause. You just keep on going as if you think conversation is like throwing spaghetti against the wall. Sooner or later, something has to stick. I mean, one of these topics has to arouse his interest, right? He has to respond to something you say. No, he doesn't. And most of the time, he won't. He simply can't process all the sentences and paragraphs gushing out of your mouth. Your waves of words overwhelm his tiny brain, and it will explode. He shuts down. He gets distracted, tunes you out, and goes into the zone, staring into the distance with no expression on his face. When you notice you have lost him, you will get upset. Conversation over. Actually, there never was one. It was only you talking. During those Infrequent times he speaks, you don't let him finish. You interrupt, ask too many questions, demand more details, want him to clarify statements, and make too many observations. You cut in and ask him to share his emotional reaction to the events he's describing. But honey, how did that make you feel? You are driving him crazy. I'm telling you, you are. More importantly, you are choking off any possibility he will keep talking and maybe get a little deeper. Your interruptions make him lose his train of thought. When you ask about his emotions, that is a question he literally can't answer right then. He has no idea how he feels about what he is saying. He may be able to find some feelings about the topic a few hours or a few days later. But if you press him to identify his emotions on the spot, he will stop talking. If you're in this I talk too much category, you will have to concentrate on reducing your flow of words. Talk less. For regular, no-conflict conversations, try the 5-minute rule. Talk for 5 minutes with your husband and then stop. Give him a chance to think, digest what you said, and prepare some kind of response. He might say something back and he might not, but at least by pausing, you give him an opportunity to engage with you. If he says nothing during the pause, which is possible, let a few minutes go by instead of jumping back in with more comments on the same topic. Discuss something else for 5 minutes and pause again. If he doesn't respond, let 10 or 15 minutes pass. By being silent more often, you might motivate him to initiate more conversations. He will notice your silences, they are so rare, and may talk more to draw you back closer to him. If you really want to hear back from him on a certain topic, whether you brought it up or he did, give him a reminder. Hey, remember that issue we discussed? When you're ready, please find me and tell me what you're thinking and how you feel about it. Then drop it. For more in-depth communication strategies, get my book, Men Are Clams, Women Are Crowbars, published by Focus on the Family. You can find that on my website, davideclarkephd.com. That's Clarke with an E. Okay, let's wrap things up now. The week is over. You are sitting face-to-face with your husband in the second meeting. Ask him to share the information he came up with in the 3 areas. His resentments against you, how you turn him away from conversation and intimacy, and what you can do to help him open up. Sit there with a pad and a pen or with your iPad. Write down everything he says. If he gives you some solid input, do 2 things. First, thank him and promise him you will work hard to improve in the specific areas he mentioned. Second, tell him how you think you shut him down. You're giving your input now. Ask for his comments on your assessment of your role as his wife and work with him to create a list of new behaviors you will put into practice. It is very likely he will have little or nothing to say to you at this meeting. After all, he is an intimacy avoider and doesn't like to delve into personal matters. If he turns out to be less than a fountain of information, express your disappointment, again, using one-way communication, and schedule another meeting in 2 weeks. Do not share with him the ways you think you kill intimacy. Ask him to do the same assignment again and to come prepared in 2 weeks. Tell him you will now get input about your role as his wife from others who know you well. Don't just threaten to discuss this topic with others, whether in person, by phone, email, text. Contact your children, family members, and close friends, and ask them to tell you how they think you push your husband away from intimacy. Make it clear this is very important to you, and you must have the most honest, no punches pulled evaluations of your intimacy-killing behavior. Inform these individuals that you want to stop making mistakes, so you need their help to do it. Write down everything they communicate to you. Finally, in the 3rd meeting, you ask your husband for his report. When he finishes, share your own ideas and those supplied by outside sources with his help if he'll give it. Nail down the leading 6 or 7 ways you stop conversations and closeness. Also, identify the top 6 or 7 ways you can motivate him to become intimate with you. Write these down and give him a copy. Now, in my next 2 podcasts, I will deal with a very sensitive topic, submission. Most wives hate to hear the word submission. I'm going to tell you biblically what it does not mean and what submission does mean. So stay tuned for that. I think you'll find it very helpful. It's a very important biblical topic that God wants you to be involved in. So until next time, David E. Clarke with an E, out.